At times like this, I don't know who's going to give up first, the ship or the crew. Probably neither, but it's patience has reached a terminal condition now. The storm isn't going to let us go. It just goes on and on and on. We get a lull and it blows up again. The seas are getting bigger, we're being pushed south, but the damp is the worst thing, I think. There's nothing worse to a sailor than getting wet. I've been in a lot of storms, but never in a craft like this. I suppose we knew that when we set out. Everyone had an intelligent guess anyway that the weather was going to be bad, but it's a south season, which has blown for thousands of years, and now we've got a nor'east storm. If we do get through, and I can only assume, my God, look at this one coming. If I can only assume that we will, then we'll have something unforgettable behind us, and we can rely on the fortitude of this perhaps to carry us through in whatever we're doing outside this completely crazy business.
This crazy business is Bob Hobman's attempt to sail across the Indian Ocean in a primitive native craft. He aims to show that the ancestors of the people of Madagascar, who originally came from Indonesia, did so not as scholars think in short stages round the Indian Ocean, but directly across, sailing in one of the great epic migration voyages of history.
And this is a bit of a commercial model. When they start weaving it by hand, it's even stronger.
For writer and sailor Bob Hobman, years of research into these ancient maritime cultures has brought him to the southern Philippines with his friend, artist Chico Hansen, to study the methods of canoe construction that still survive in remote communities. Methods that made the islanders of Southeast Asia perhaps the greatest ocean voyagers of all time.
A few lobster we're after today to help out. Get under here.
The only remaining evidence of a maritime technology that spanned oceans is seen in the way these Indonesian boats are built.
These boats are hardy, they're sturdy, they're built for a purpose which is completely mad, some would think, chasing whales in such a flimsy contraption, but it's a technology which hasn't changed in at least 500 years, which must prove that the boats, when they were first conceived, are strong enough, durable enough to follow the purpose they were designed for without having any changes made to them at all.
These people venture miles from land, hunting whale, shark, and the manta ray, for food, not profit. And the way they build their wooden boats, lashed together with palm fiber rope, gives a vital clue to the building of the expedition craft. On the Philippine island of Tawi-Tawi, the vice-governor gives Bob Hobman a birthday present.
This began 4 years ago in the dusty library of the Royal Geographical Society in London, and at that time I didn't think I'd be standing in the middle of a forest in Tawi-Tawi watching a giant tree actually being cut to the ground in order to make this whole project a realization.
The Sarimanok, named after the bird-fish messenger of Philippine legend, is the first ocean-going sailing canoe to be built in this region for hundreds of years. Working more from race memory and without plans, the Filipino shipwrights shaped the keel from a single log. The stability of the canoe depends on the specially crafted outriggers, like a primitive catamaran. If any of these fragile struts should break, the craft will become unstable and ultimately turn over. They are vital to the Sarimanok's seaworthiness, as the crew will find out, to their cost. The sides of the hull are formed from planks, following the line of the hollow keel and held in position by thwarts, lashed under tension with Carbonegra palm fiber ropes. Sarimanok's 60-foot length will flex and move in harmony with the enormous seas it will face in the Indian Ocean. After 7 months, with the workmen still putting the finishing touches to the hull, the launching of this unique craft captures the attention of the world's media and the interest of the Australian ambassador to the Philippines. The launching is the first official assignment for expedition photographer Don King and the only woman in the crew, Sally Crook.
Okay, I name you Sarimanok.
Again! Harder! That's lovely.
I became involved in this voyage because I saw an advert scribbled in pencil on a notice board at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, where I used to work. It said a 7th century raft crossing the Indian Ocean or something like that, but I applied anyway because I was interested in Madagascar and I wanted an adventure.
For ocean yachtsman Steve Corrigan, sailing this craft will be a difficult challenge.
She's so beautiful. She's floating well. She's floating a lot better than any of us thought would ever do. And she's going to float all the way across to Madagascar.
But Sarimanok is not going to carry Chico Hansen to Madagascar. On the journey from Tawi-Tawi to Bali, Chico, the strongest and fittest of the crew, becomes ill with hepatitis. He goes into a coma. Desperately, Bob beaches Sarimanok and has Chico airlifted to hospital, but within days, he is dead. When Sarimanok finally reaches Bali, it appears the voyage is over before it has really begun. But the following year, when the southeast trade winds return, Bob Hobman, with a larger crew and a refitted Sarimanok, are ready.
The wind southeast, we can just barely make the shallow water drop right in there. But if
The first of the new crew to join Bob Hobman on Bali are the American navigator Bill McGrath and boat specialist Colin Putt from New Zealand.
Yeah, we'll put that away. So that means no chance. Absolutely nothing.
For Bill, it's the biggest challenge of his career, guiding the Sarimanok across the Indian Ocean to the northern tip of Madagascar, using only the sun and the stars. The charts, compasses, chronometers, sextant, all modern instruments are sealed away under bond for use only in an emergency.
Strong plastic rope that we're keeping as emergency measures. All emergency and modern gear going in.
You've got your last time check now.
8:21.
Who's got a watch on the crew?
Anybody else with a watch?
But what I mean is, anybody ever watch with the right time? That's the only beauty of a
You've
watch.
got a watch. Take it off.
Does anybody ever watch? Yeah.
Mr. McGrath, please.
Yeah, I know it's a good joke, but nobody's got the right time. It isn't worth a blast if you're navigating.
We're just setting one clock to GMT so that if ever we do need these, we have at least one watch to help us with the time for navigation.
Well, Wally bought us an alarm clock in the bazaar yesterday to tell us what time it is for lunch and so on, and this morning I took it to bits and removed the minute hand, so you can't use it for navigation. Lunchtime will be slightly variable, but what the hell?
Oh, Colin, here's one for you. It's from the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Mr. Lange. He said, "Let me extend to you and the people of Madagascar the greetings and best wishes of the government of the people of New Zealand. This message of goodwill has traveled many thousands of miles with a crew whose courage and spirit I applaud. Both our nations were founded by seafaring people. This historic voyage serves to remind us all of the bravery of our ancestors. I'm confident that the bonds of friendship which develop among the crew and the people of your country will contribute to greater understanding and goodwill between our nations. Yours sincerely, David Lange."
Well, that's very nice of him, isn't it?
I'll keep the black stuff fairly handy to you there.
Completing the international crew are Australian Robin Davey, a professional diver, and Albrecht Schaefer, a journalist from West Germany. And unseen behind the camera, to record the whole voyage on film, is Australian cameraman Peter Rogers, an experienced sailor who will have to stand his watch like the others. To maintain the integrity of the expedition, Sally Crook, a nutritionist, must select, preserve and pack only the foods the original migrant voyagers would have taken to Madagascar.
Most of our diet will be rice, of course, which is still the staple diet of Asia, and it's also the staple food of Madagascar, and it came from Asia in the migrations. The kind of rice they have there is paddy with water in the fields, which they don't have in most of the rest of Africa. That's because their diet came from here, their rice came from here. And here we have some taro, which for a bit of variety. And of course for protein we've got dried fish, and we've got some pork cooked in here. And for vegetables we have a little bit of pickled vegetable, but mostly we're going to sprout soya beans for vegetables. And we have dried bananas, dried tempeh, which is soya beans again, and vinegar, and a few spices, which if we don't have much protein, we want something a bit interesting to eat, so we're going to just put spices in the rice and hope that's enough.
For the Balinese, it is appropriate that as Sarimanok is retracing a voyage of their ancestors, it should be blessed in a Hindu ceremony.
Thank you, Mr. Arifin, for making a special visit to Parang Bay, because, you know, we have to get away very quickly.
A voyage of 4,000 miles lies ahead. With the southeast trade winds behind them, all will be fine. But if the winds move round, their ability to stay on course will be seriously hampered. Finally, Sarimanok slips its anchor rope and with an escort of the graceful Pladang, heads out into the Lombok Strait in the Indian Ocean for Madagascar.
Okay, let's sweat it on. Let's go. Hoopla. Any more? Cold. Even better. Any more? Go.
That's chock-a-block.
Take her on out tight. Tight. Bring her back to Steve. Is that right up, Dawn? Is that right up? Ready? Yeah. Bring it back. Oh, just take it to the lima. Take it to harness. Yeah. Take it to a harness. Back to the front. Put it back. Oh, that'll do it.
Navigator Bill McGrath plots a course that will take Sarimanok southwest and across the wind. His long-range plan is to turn northwest on the approach to Madagascar and use the current to make landfall at Diego Suarez. The crew settle into the routines that will carry them through the months ahead.
I'll tell you one thing, Sally. It's inconvenient and it's labor-intensive. But there's a small consolation in knowing you can't do it on P&O and Orient, and you can't do it on your Sparkman and Stevens 75.
Well, I get up as soon as I can see it's getting light and start the fire straight away and make tea, and then make breakfast. And usually straight after that I begin making dinner, because it might be a stew, it takes a long time to cook. I'm enjoying being on the sea. I can't say I'm enjoying cooking. That's the last thing I wanted to do. I'm a nutritionist, but not a cook. But I'd like to be working on the tiller like I did last year.
About 50 degrees up on its altitude, which puts it along its path at about 022. True.
We're also used to compasses and modern methods of pointing the ship by, but here we have no compass, so we have to use the shadow of the sun, and just that is our only indication. to give us some bearing of where we're going.
Now we put course desired on this piece of wood. Course desired onto straight ahead, and ask the helmsman then to make the adjustment to put the shadow across the center of the dial. In so doing, this mere piece of wood becomes a true bearing, a true compass. It's simply the old shadow stick. The great captains used it, and long before them, other captains did, and long before ships were built, it was the basic way to tell direction.
Unless you can lift it up. It's hard to know what's happening to the outriggers because the rattan is creaking away, and I know it's chafing against the big arms. If one goes, then it'll set up a chain reaction, and they'll all start splitting, and then once the first one flies, once it's given 6 inches or even less, then the whole lot will go, and we're without an outrigger, which means absolute disaster for us.
And another one.
She's taking a terrible pounding, really. I'm astounded that she's performing as well as she has. But it's probably all the fittings, all the lashings are taking a strain, and the only way you could check those is by beaching her somewhere, and there doesn't look like a lot of beaches around here.
That's a bit more.
Apart from the anxiety over Sarimanok breaking up, there's the constant fear of being swept overboard. The unseasonal storms pursue them, and the deckhouse, built to provide shade, is no protection from the driving rain and spray. The crew, those not on watch, sleep on the deckhouse roof, although everywhere on the ship is wet. Then, the fear that has haunted Bob since Chico's death is realized. Colin Putt is ill. Without radio, they cannot ask for advice or assistance. They can't go back into the wind and have few options in the direction that Sarimanok will sail. Even if they run for Christmas Island or the Cocos Islands, these are tiny specks of coral in an infinity of ocean. Colin's condition deteriorates, and so does the weather. The cold, miserable nights bring their own measure of anxiety. Everyone on board knows that as Sarimanok is built entirely of wood and natural materials, it will not be picked up on a ship's radar. Unseen in the darkness, they could be run down by a large freighter or tanker. It continues to rain.
Last night was a bad one. I don't think we've had anything quite as nasty as that, even coming down from the Philippines. And there's so many stresses on the structure of the boat, you just never know where to begin. Last night, one of the big arms cracked badly. I noticed it when we were coming in about 2 o'clock in the morning in the rain. And I just get these wedges together to try and stop it from cracking any further, otherwise we've lost one of our vital arms. But, you know, all the engineering and structural wisdom aboard is not nearly as good as the lads who built it, so we have a little meeting and decide what could be done. You could make things worse by strengthening one place and weakening another.
There's an endless amount of things to be done. There's always little odd jobs to be done around the boat, and if you seek those jobs out, you'll find enough of them, you know, whether it's patching the sail or tying something down or redoing a lashing or checking some broken bamboo on the decking, and there's just all kinds of little things, and sometimes you've got the energy and the spirit to work all day on them, and sometimes you just feel like taking a nap and reading a book. But there's always things to be done. I haven't been bored yet on this trip.
There is so much work to be done. The ship has to be virtually rebuilt every day. And there are still people reading books. I can't believe them. everyone who's got a possible spare second picks up a book and starts reading it.
I don't find any difficulty in sharing a boat with 7 men. It's no problem. They're all very polite, gentlemanly, and we don't bother about, undressing and washing in front of each other. We just got used to it. It's no problem at all, really.
It becomes obvious Sarimanok cannot take the constant pounding sailing southwest across the wind, and reluctantly Bob orders a change in course.
What's that heading, Bill?
Well, as you ordered, Captain, we're heading due west now.
You happy with that?
Yes, indeed. I certainly applaud your decision. It's riding far easier, going just as fast.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry about that earlier, but I was just really worried. She was, we've got that bad split in the Batangan, and she doesn't go to windward, so... But I wanted to keep on with your plan of going south. But you think we'll be all right here? What about our options?
Well, going north of Cocos in Christmas also means we're going closer to Sumatra, and we have more options in case we have any more breaking up of the rigging to run for shelter and get repaired.
Well, that's true. That's true. And the seas up here, you think there'll be... we don't get the big heaving southeast till we get south, further south, yeah?
Well, it'll be delayed a bit longer. We won't get the strong southeasterlies until much farther out. And they don't develop either very far north very early. They develop far north where we're going much later. So it'll be just an easier run this way. And as Steve pointed out, a shorter run, too.
Keep the safety in.
I've been worried at times. I've been worried about the boat, whether she'll make it all right, whether she'll stay together. I've accepted the fact that basically this ocean stretches forever. But the boat has really pulled through well. Sarimanok is strong, but the ocean is stronger.
The sea showed nothing but disdain last night. 3 o'clock in the morning, the ship being thrown out of the water like a lame duck. Up and down, bilge full of water, everybody damn. I didn't think she would make it, really. The strain was enormous, incredible, worse than Sarimanok has ever done. Just under bare poles, no stormsail set. The sea just had it at its mercy. A crazy storm from the northwest moving around to the southwest. And it went away this morning, and there was enormous relief by the crew because another night like that, and I don't really think she would have kept up. But now the sky is nice, puffy cumulus around, 15 knots. We're flying along 5 or 6 knots, hurtling down these big swells, and tonight's almost forgotten, but I don't think anybody, any one of us aboard Sarimanok will forget last night. That was one of our blackest, and I hope that... well, I hope that we never get another one.
Colin's condition stabilizes, but he's very weak and still uncertain what's wrong.
I don't know. It's something like malaria, and it's a little bit like hepatitis, but that's often a secondary effect of malaria, so I just don't know.
The decision is taken to seek medical help at the Cocos Islands, a series of low-lying coral atolls 1,500 miles west of Bali. They unseal the modern navigation equipment to get a comparative reading and ensure that they don't miss the Cocos. Also, Bill McGrath is keen to check the accuracy of his navigation by what he calls his Neanderthal instruments.
Very consistent. I think that confirms it, Albert, that Earlier shots have indicated the sun is now over the crest past noontime. That the lowest altitude, obviously, lowest angle is 34. That's clear. And
he is he's a very good navigator, and he's very precise and very responsible, and yeah, I have a lot of confidence, no doubt.
Latitude 11 degrees 55 minutes south. Longitude 107 degrees 18 minutes east.
Using the watches set to Greenwich Mean Time and the sextant, Steve Corrigan obtains a fix on their latitude and longitude. This confirms, to Bill's great satisfaction, the remarkable accuracy of his navigation. He is out by only half a degree. Just when they think that nothing else can happen, the Indian Ocean springs another surprise.
And just before the midnight watch, we're being slapped by some pretty heavy swells on the beam, and the rudder post started to break up. We had two very large steering oars, which gave us about 3 or even 4 times too much blade in the water. And it was the length, of course, that was the problem. So we decided to chop a meter off, and we hauled this thing out going for it at sea, which wasn't an easy job at all, because once Sarimanok or any ship in these conditions gets going, there's no way you can slow them down or stop them to effect this kind of repair. Anything in the water is a problem.
Despite the knowledge that Sarimanok cannot stop easily or turn round at all, Don King volunteers to go over the side and guide the steering oar into position. For everyone watching, falling overboard is the greatest fear. They know that if he slips, he's going to be a long time in the water with only the sharks for company.
The entire horizon is covered in a sheet of grey. Over to the right, there's a squall, which is actually raining. Right behind us is a squall, that's raining there. And all the way on our starboard side, it is just rain, rain, rain. Sunshine, and it's not going to last. I suggest you get some black rice and coconut into you and batten down the hatches, baby, because we're in for it. There's another huge bitch that I've got with the Admiralty giving us lousy advice. I mean, the weather has to be abnormal, because otherwise nobody would sail this ocean, certainly not the Austronesian. We've got 8 people aboard who could not, in fact, light a fire. It's not only just Sally. It's the wrong selection of wood, the wrong techniques of lighting a fire. The wood that comes aboard is driftwood that's all rotten and it's been wet for 15,000 years, and it just will not light. It's a pain in the ass right now. It is a thorough pain in the ass. It's miserable, it's rotten. As I look at people's faces, they go, oh my God, are we going to make it? They keep glancing toward the life raft. That's not the objective. The objective is to get this bloody thing going. She's being pushed to extreme limits. I don't know whether she can last that much longer. I suppose she can. It's not good to underestimate a ship, but the shrouds on the mast are starting to part now, and it's one of those the strong whaling ropes. It's a constant flexing, throwing backwards and forwards of the mizzen as we're heaving down these seas, and the ship is flung from one side to the other. That'll have to be replaced. We've got spare rope. I'm just worried about the main doing the same thing. The small main that we've got had to be taken down this morning. That completely threw off all its bolt ropes and ended up a floating rag. So the lads had to get into that pretty early this morning to save it from thrashing itself to pieces. And we'll stitch up that this afternoon, but I think the weather is really worsened so much that we won't be able to put it back on again. There isn't a dry part on this ship left anymore. The navigator Bill McGrath's stuff is completely soggy, and it's only because he's got a good sense of humor and a lot of fortitude that he's not screaming with frustration. And I don't know how Sally carries on. She starts to lose it from time to time. Yesterday was a bad one, but she pulled herself out of it. Everyone's just got to pull together as best they can, and the bilge is full of water. This bucketing and bucketing goes on continuously, day and night, and it's an exhausting, heart-aching business, just throwing out more, and while you're throwing it out, it's coming in over your shoulder. And we've got Colin Putt, who's, God knows, he said he had a good night's sleep last night, but the other 10 nights he's been ill. It must have been sheer hell for that poor man. And that man is absolutely wet beneath the skin. There's nothing dry, there's nothing harmonious about the ship, but she just seems to push on and hold together. Everything is creaking and rattling and slapping about, and the sea just won't stop. But what can you do? You just got to hang on, I suppose. There's nothing left. At least we're making miles ahead, which is about the only consolation we have to preserve our sanity. And we got a hot cup of tea, which takes Sally an hour to prepare, and about 2 minutes for it to get cold, and if it's not slopped out of the bucket on the way back to the people who are working at the back of the ship. We have to run into Cocos with Colin. Certainly not being used as an excuse. I'm determined enough and stubborn enough to keep pushing this bastard through the water. But if we have to call him with Colin, then we'll certainly take the opportunity to relash and to try and get ourselves on a reasonable footing to get back into the sea again for the next 3,000 miles. God, I hate to think of the next 3,000. If the first 3,000 are going to be like this. Oh, you nasty piece of ocean.
Well, we started off with 5 sails, 2 mains, 2 mizens, and 1 stormsail. We've lost 1 main so far, so we're taking it very easy. It means we take our mizzen down at night because we just cannot afford to lose one in any squall, which means a lot of extra pressure on the crew, and it's not like hauling up on a winch and just throwing up one crew going up and hauling up a sail. It takes 5, 6 people for each sail change and full on. It's not an easy craft to sail.
Land hoy! We're 1 point off port bow!
On the horizon, the Cocos Islands. The crew's relief at sighting these in daylight is edged with tension. The entrance through the reef, which almost surrounds the islands, is on the north side, and they're approaching from the south. But their luck holds. They are sighted, and the island's administration sends a launch.
What should we send them, actually? Grateful for any little tow.
No.
Change your shoulder watch.
Just flash. We have an injured crewman, a sick crewman that has to be landed.
You'll see from the rig that there's no modern cruiser coming in.
I think we need more assistance. How about a psychiatrist? I may have one there.
Yeah, please send out your duty psychiatrist. That's a Neanderthal masochist. Needs help.
Colin Putt and the Sarimanok crew exchange subdued goodbyes. They respect his knowledge and seamanship and are going to miss him. But they know he will now get the medical treatment he needs and will probably be airlifted back to hospital in Australia. The Cocos Islands, which are administered by Australia, provide the crew of the Sarimanok with the opportunity to replenish their supplies of firewood and replace the dried fish and other foodstuffs spoiled by the rain, and to get fresh water. Gradually, the fears and depression of the last 2 weeks fade. They set out on the next stage in the hope that nothing ahead can be as bad as what they have already faced.
I started out in photography using just an Iconos, taking pictures of the surf. So I've always been oriented towards the ocean and action with my photography, and so I've been dragging behind the boat a lot, trying to capture the boat under sail from a distance in different lighting conditions and different moods, and it's really been fun. You know, it's kind of cold when you get out there in the water, but it's really a thrilling feeling to be dragging behind the boat at 5 or 6 knots. It's kind of hard to breathe, but it's a real thrill. It's like almost like water skiing.
On another occasion, when Sarimanok is becalmed in water over 2 miles deep, cameraman Peter Rogers joins Don King to get some underwater footage of the boat. Suddenly, the 2 photographers are joined by a baby finback whale who comes out of the depths to satisfy its curiosity and stays with the Sarimanok for several days. The water here, in the middle of the Indian Ocean, is so deep that against all expectations they catch very few fish to give variety to their diet and make life easier for Sally, the nutritionist and reluctant cook.
My feelings are that Sally has a hard job on this vessel. There's a lot of pressure. She's the only female. You know, the guys can get together somehow and sort their problems out, but a female on her own, and there's a lot of pressure with that damn fire. You've got soaking wet firewood and trying to get a meal cooked in incredibly hard conditions, unbelievably hard conditions. I think she's a champion.
On this voyage, we were eating the same sort of food they would have eaten 2,000 years ago, and probably what they would have brought with them on this journey. And of course they were Asian people, and it was a long time ago, but I don't see why Europeans shouldn't survive pretty well on this diet. The only thing is that they're used to chocolate and sweets and convenience food, and it might be difficult for them to do without, but that's just what they want and not really what they need. I'm sure all their requirements are going to be met with this diet.
At the end of the day, the navigation doesn't stop.
It's just dead easy. These, the sun, moon, and stars are clear signposts of whether or not we're going down the right track or not. And all the stars are signposts. You can look in any direction you want, you see, and use them all as signposts. You can use the star ahead as the guide to steer, or you can use the one exactly on your left side and keep that one on your left side, so you're in effect steering by the star on your left side. Or you can use any star as a signpost.
Look what I found in my bed, Sally. Flying fish.
Oh, great. I'll sleep with the rest of them.
Would be a nice breakfast.
What would you like to sleep with?
Oh, a bit breathless.
Hey?
You like it, does it, yeah?
Oh, aboard. Yeah, in fact, the meals have been excellent since we started out. The meals have been fabulous. It's the fish that we dried, we caught and smoked and dried on Cocos to replace the whale meat and the manta, which was a tragedy that went rotten and was attacked by blowfly. I've never seen maggots appear so quickly. Those blowflies must have been hanging in for centuries waiting for that rotten whale meat to arrive. That was sad that that went, because that had a flavor all of its own. Otherwise, dried fish is pretty bland.
We want to make the miles and make this passage as quickly as possible, because the longer you're out here, the more chance you are of getting hit by something bigger. but not pushing it too hard so that we keep the vessel intact. It's all very amicable, we don't have arguments about it, but there is a pressure to get to Madagascar for obvious reasons. But there's also a pressure from me to keep the vessel in one piece. To me, that's what it's all about, keeping the vessel in one piece. If we don't make Madagascar, hell, we'll make somewhere else, but at least we'll make somewhere.
Despite the ever-present fear of being run down, they welcome the sight of this, the only ship they are to see in the entire voyage. It changes course to investigate this strange craft, obviously a relic of another age, and then hurries away without making contact. They are alone in the ocean once more.
We were just having a little discussion on bailing here, and it's the one aspect of this voyage that just does not go away. We can take a day off sail repairs, we can miss a meal, we can miss the morning constitution, but the one thing that just never goes away is bailing. It's always there. So we've sort of thrown a few figures around, and it's pretty boring down there throwing water out, so you come up with all these ridiculous calculations. And we've come up with something like this. It seems to be that for the first 30 days, we worked out that it was 200 buckets per watch. Now that's 8 watches per 3-hour watch, that is, so that's 8 watches per day, which gives you 1,600 buckets per day. 30 days, that's 32, 48,000 buckets. All right, so 48,000 buckets. Now, for the last 20 days, the ship's getting lighter, right? It's getting much better. Now we're cruising now. It's only 100 buckets per watch. So that gives us, that's another 16,000. We're up to now 48, 64,000 buckets, right, so far.
The whole voyage.
Now, Albert,
260,000.
I heard you muttering a new method of navigation here.
Yeah, I was thinking while bailing, as everybody used to think while bailing. I was thinking to work out another navigation system. If we count 64,000, let's say 64,000 buckets for the whole voyage, and we have 4,000 miles roughly the length of the voyage, so we could count how many buckets per mile. That comes to the conclusion that it would be 16 buckets per mile. Yeah.
Have you told Bill that? It might be a useful bit of information for him.
It's not so familiar with this.
There's a touch of east in this. This is what we need if we want to get south to Madagascar.
Okay, I'll tie in the end, man.
Sorry. We had a breeze from the west-northwest, which is almost impossible in a situation in a huge ocean, which is covered with a south-east trade pattern traditionally and for millennium. But there it was right behind us, and it's giving us a push now. We're in our 5th hour.
After days of being driven northwest, when it looked as though they would miss Madagascar altogether, and be driven onto East Africa or even Arabia, the dramatic change in the wind turns them south, back on course, and their spirits soar.
By God, that was a close shave this morning. You know, after last night's run, 100 miles before breakfast, sitting on the foredeck, looking out at the leeward outrigger, which is a fascinating sight at any time, and suddenly I realized, Jesus, the thing is bending down like the nose cone on a Concorde. The hell's going on? I honestly thought then it was going to split up in a minute. I didn't think we had any time to move at all. But boy, we sure moved. You know, if we lost that, we're just completely legless. We got one broken wing on the most important side because we were leaning and heeling and flying down waves, and she's taking all the strain. I think we fixed it now. We've worked for about 4 hours on it, crawling around out there and getting swept off them from time to time. Dawn, ask Bill McGrath to come out, would you please? I just want to say something. Albert will have to stay on the helm, I'm afraid. We've got to steer the ship. Sally, can you come up from the galley for a minute? Just hop up and sit out there. I just want to talk to everyone for a minute. You saw the champagne coming aboard and you thought it was for my birthday. Well, it's not for a birthday, it's for a death day. I think birthdays should be celebrated in private and death days celebrated in public. We're only a small public out here in the middle of the Indian Ocean, but the intent is just as strong. Everyone's had their own reasons for coming. On the Sarimanok, it's either the project itself, the nature of it, or a trust in the ship, or it's just a pure adventure. All three of these were the same reasons that Chico Hansen, who died a year ago this morning, would have chosen when he put so much of himself into the trip. And although it's incredibly miserable, if you'd had a choice, now you probably would have decided to stay at home. Chico didn't have that choice. He didn't have the choice to make, because he made the ultimate sacrifice for the trip, and that was his life. One of the things that Chico used to say, and he lived by it all his life that I knew him anyway, was a quote from Ellen Keller which said that life is a daring adventure or nothing at all. I'd just like you to have a little drink for Chico.
Look, Chico.
The celebratory champagne for Chico could be perhaps an omen for the success of their voyage. Madagascar, slowly but surely, is getting ever closer.
Oh, Chico should be here to enjoy this.
Drinking champagne in these conditions aren't really conducive. But I think Chico would have approved, because he fancied a bit of champagne at any time.
600 miles east of Madagascar, the thing they've been dreading happens. The starboard outrigger breaks off.
Yeah, I know. You ready?
Yep.
Right, okay. Once it's coming down, once you leave this one off, come on to that line.
They concentrate on getting the broken section on board. One way or another, it's going with them. In spite of the imminent danger of capsize, they have an almost unshakable faith in their crippled craft.
It's the ship that's keeping us alive. The ship keeps us afloat. The ship is pushing us towards Madagascar. The ship will take us there.
People always ask, why do you do adventures, or why do you do this? I can only say is that the man who takes his family to the beach house every year for 10 years, 15 years, suddenly breaks out and says, right, next year we're all off to China. Now that man is going through all the same emotions as I probably am going through right now. He's doing something new, he's broken away from the mundane things, and he is experiencing an adventure, and if it's successful with him, he'll go somewhere else the next year. And that's exactly like us. You up the stakes each time.
More than 2 months after leaving Indonesia, their high-stakes adventure pays off. Like their predecessors centuries ago, they finally sight land. It's Madagascar.
Small slope, a high promontory, and yeah, we're on it.
We've arrived at the mouth of Diego Suarez, spot frigging on. After 5,000 motorway miles of no bloody instruments, this side of Jesus Christ.